Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what time you're looking at this podcast. This podcast series we call Race, Culture, and the Church. Race, Culture, and the Church. It's a series that we started literally 1 week after the murder of George Floyd. And we've talked about a range of issues with a range of guests that enter into our space. And think of it, again, like a Venn diagram where you have three circles: race, culture, and church. The ideal would be to intersect all of those circles, but at least 2 out of 3 will get there. But I'm almost willing to bet the farm today that we will hit all 3 of those circles. And I am pleased to welcome into this space the Chief Diversity Officer for the Sacramento Municipal Utility District, Jose Bodipo-Memba. Welcome, Jose.
Good to be here, Pastor Meeks. Very honored.
Long overdue. You're a busy man.
No, I'm just happy to be here.
You're kind. You're a busy man.
Very blessed last 8 months or so, of which you know a lot about. So just good chance to catch up on over the microphone.
It is good. It is really good. I want to read something again. Our research team, which was comprised of you emailing your bio. That's the research team that we have here. It says that Jose previously served as, we'll get into DEI and all that good stuff, but you've served as SMUD's director, Sustainable Communities, with over 20 years of environmental experience. How long have you been at SMUD specifically?
I've been at SMUD for 13 years. 13-year anniversary May of this year.
Congratulations!
Thank you.
Congratulations. I'll go into the glorious stuff here. 2010 recipient of the Sacramento Business Journal 40 Under 40 Award. The 2012 Drexel University Oxholm Community Leadership Award. The 2021 UC Davis Inspirational Leadership in Diversity Award, a graduate of Nehemiah Emerging Leaders Program, and the 2015 Drexel University 40 Under 40 Distinguished Alumni Award. BA in History, UC Berkeley, History from UC Berkeley, and an MBA from Drexel. The only thing missing is a partridge in a pear tree. That is quite a resume for a relatively young man. Overachiever, or are you just swimming in the lane that you've been given to swim in?
No, I again, anything that I've achieved really is because of my parents and what they've done to put me in positions. I shared with you before. My father came here to the United States as a student in ministry. Came here to study at the seminary in the Bay Area. Didn't have much, worked for everything he had, was able to get his master's degree there, a couple of master's degrees there, doctorate there. And his model really set the pace, I think, for myself and my siblings. So, I'll never be on the same level as my dad. So I'm still chasing. I don't know about
that. Okay,
Trust
so he has
me.
a doctorate. The day's not over yet. Doctorate is definitely achievable, but I definitely see where that came from. The higher education. What influenced your mom?
So my mom again came here. My dad came first, and then my mom came after. They married back in Equatorial Guinea. So Equatorial Guinea is where my family is from. It's a small country in Central Western Africa. It is the only Spanish-speaking country on the continent of Africa. And my mom and my dad were married there. Moved here, but again, based off of finances, my mom had to stay back until my dad was able to get established here. My mom served as a registered nursing assistant for over 35 years. And again, I think service comes from both my parents. My dad was a teacher. My mom was working with elderly patients for all of her life. Again, I think the hard work, seeing them work hard, seeing them put in extra hours, seeing them take on multiple jobs to make sure myself and my siblings could have opportunities. I think they, again, are the drive. They're the model in terms of what I'm trying to accomplish, for sure.
I think you've made incredible, the return on their investment in their son, Jose, is paying dividends. I'm looking at the service areas. If I count this right, again, we'll get into DEI and SMUD and all that in a second. I'm just trying to paint a picture of Jose Bodipo-Memba. You serve on at least 6 boards?
I've cut some back, for sure.
Okay, well, let me call the roll.
So some of these are past tense, for sure. Trying to be able to be good instead of be spread out too thin.
Member of the Sacramento Hispanic Chamber of Commerce.
That's correct.
Crocker Art Museum Board.
That's correct.
The American Clean Power DEI Council.
That's correct, but I'm also sharing that responsibility with my good friend, Dr. Markeisha Webster. So.
Okay, that's wonderful. You're still on the board.
It's a committee, not so much of a board. Yeah.
Center for Fathers and Family.
That's correct. Shout out to Rick Jennings.
CADA, Capital Area Development Authority.
That's correct.
Okay, you said that certain things will be falling off here. Nothing's falling off.
I definitely am taking some of those responsibilities back, but for sure.
And I am only teasing. I am in a loving way, but this bespeaks of who you are. You are deeply invested not only in you. You've been given responsibility passed on by your parents. Again, I'll go there with my third circle in the Venn diagram. As Paul said to Timothy, I know your mother. I know your grandmother. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know your parents, but based on what you've just shared about your parents and their drive, their history, well, I definitely see it in you.
Thank you.
And so it is being lived out in a very robust 360 kind of way, full color, everything, however, whatever metaphor you want to use, it's being lived out. To your point, it's one of those things that, if there's always a yes, then your no doesn't mean too much. So I would invite you to consider no from time to time, but I'll leave that to you.
Yeah, no, there's been a lot more no's for sure, but I think part of the goal too is, I guess the other part of the driver, Pastor Meeks, is, growing up, I grew up in Nevada, California, just northern Marin County. Again, my parents, worked hard, but didn't have a lot, The other piece that I think that is a big driver for me is I grew up with some amazing friends who would give their shirts off their back for me. And I got story upon story of things that, 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10-year-old kids did just to make sure that I could ride bikes with them or have a Nintendo so I could play the games and not make people lose at an overnight birthday party, things of that nature. So, rides to school and things of that nature. So when I think of how much has been given, it's really not too much to give back, because it's just, I cannot forget, my friend Parsha Ghazi he and his sister would take me to school every single day. And when Parsha was sick, his sister would come, even though she went to the different school, and come pick me up, make sure I could get to and from. Like, these are small things that add up. So yeah, a board, a couple hours a night, it's not, or a month, it's not going to hurt too much to help other folks be effective in their role.
Times 6, times 7, times quite a bit. You are now, congratulations, the Chief Diversity Officer for SMUD.
Thank you.
Explain to me, I know what diversity means. I know what an officer is. What does a diversity, equity, and inclusion officer at SMUD, what is that?
That's a great question. One, just very honored. I have to say, I love working at SMUD. There's a lot of jobs that you have where you do work, but you not necessarily can stand behind what maybe a company or organization, corporation stands for. SMUD being a public utility and not just keeping the lights on, but also making a commitment in community is made my 13 years there amazing. And in this role as a chief diversity officer, it really allows me to have an impact internally and externally. So I'll give you maybe the technical definition first, and then I can go into maybe like the vision piece second. The chief diversity officer kind of has a enterprise-wide role. So we play a big part of our people services and strategies group, which includes our human resources, our career development and learning programs, our outreach into the community, our talent management, our change management and culture work. That all sits under the chief diversity officer role. Then we have our diversity, equity, and inclusion training and development, really working on internal and external competencies related to DEI/B. So we actually have diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging as our key drivers there. And then we also have the sustainable communities work that I was doing beforehand that also sits there. So within sustainable communities, we have our community partnerships, of which SMUD is happy to partner with City Church and many other community leaders and community groups. We have our economic development partnerships that really focus on SMUD's commitment to the overall economy of the region, but really making sure that economic development is inclusive, includes every part of our community. We have our workforce development program and our commercial and residential education programs. This is where we do our STEM education trainings, but also our technical training for workforce jobs, not just for SMUD, but for the region, particularly as we're driving towards a 2030 zero carbon future. We're trying to make sure that we have the skill set within the Sacramento region to meet those needs now into the future. That really can change the economic outcomes of our region. And by looping that in with the community partnerships can really allow us to really have what I believe can be the most equitable region in the United States, where we really have job opportunities and wage opportunities and quality of living opportunities that don't exist anywhere else all the way across the Sacramento region. Because as we're creating new innovative businesses in the electrical energy space, we need that skill set here. So in Oak Park, in Del Paso Heights, in North Highlands, in Meadowview, in Wilton, in Galt, we want to make sure we're getting all of that training out as well. So I have the opportunity in terms of all of that work as a chief diversity officer to make sure that we provide tools so that everyone can be involved in that process. So does that mean our recruiting processes? For sure. But it also means how we deliver our internal training. So at SMUD, we have folks who work in our customer service department. We have folks that work on the line crews. We have folks who work at our hydroelectric plants. We have folks that work on media training. We have to make sure that we can reach them all.
I did a little research, a little, not quite GPT, but I put in barriers to DEI implementation.
Mm-hmm.
And actually I saw one response. It was barriers to DEI program implementation.
Right.
And my first reaction is I'm going to just dump and then you respond however you see fit. Program DEI, that almost sounds like a guaranteed failure when you marry those in a sentence, program and DEI. But the 5 that they listed were lack of goals and metrics, inadequate training, no leadership buy-in, budget restrictions, cultural resistance.
Right.
And I guess they mean by that implicit bias.
Yeah.
What do you think?
No, those are all real and true barriers. And I think those are things that we're actually trying to address directly at SMUD. I think part of the problem that a lot of DEI, I'm not even gonna say program, but a lot of DEI concepts, maybe die on the vine, is that folks sometimes don't even understand the what or the why or the how. Because, the way that media is, people kind of come up with their own definitions and apply it on a one-to-one basis. So one of the first things we've done at SMUD is really define what diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging actually mean at SMUD. So we actually have a director of DEIB, Dr. Markeisha Webster, and her team have actually laid out really a four-pronged approach of how we address DEI at SMUD. So when you have that understanding that this is really about creating multiple voices within our organization and serving the second most diverse county in the U.S., there's a need for us to understand a variety of backgrounds, languages, cultures, perspectives to do our jobs the best. And so we want to make sure we have different voices, different mindsets, different perspectives at the table to come up with the solutions that we need to meet this large, goal of being zero carbon at 2030. Because the key component of our actual goal in that zero carbon plan is making sure that no communities are left behind. So for us to do that and not to think about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, we won't be able to achieve that goal. The other piece so in terms of buy-in, as you mentioned before, it's literally written to our plan that we're going to get there leveraging that component. When we look at education, we've actually hired a director that has really been focused on that internal education. And here's the cool part about DEI education. You have to incorporate DEI principles because there's certain groups within our organization that have already been moving in certain directions, that have applied certain principles and concepts that are maybe further along. Some others, maybe not, because they haven't been issues that they've been dealing with. I'll give a great example. When we work with our line crews, when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, one of the key things that they talk to us about is we have to serve multiple customers. How do we make sure we make our customers feel most comfortable? Learn more about them. So we share information that we have about the community we serve with our linemen and our line women. That's important because that actually creates a better experience for both parties involved. Again, as it relates to the jobs piece, we want to make sure that we can employ and train as many folks to be competitive for SMUD jobs. That's why we reach out to different communities and community partners, because we need to have a talent base to recruit the best. And we can't just depend on small pockets, particularly when these jobs are growing. I mean, when we just talk about electrification, for example, when you look at possibly over 230,000 EVSE installations within the state, and then Sacramento region having at least 1/7 of those over the next 10 years, we need folks who have those skill sets. And we need folks who have that diversity of our region to be able to do that work. So that to me, it's a net positive for everybody when we have those processes. But if you don't have the education, if you don't have the buy-in, if you don't have metrics, and again, we have goals that are set as a part of our DEIB strategy plan, and we have goals that are set by our strategic directives that are given to us by the board. When you have all that in place, it increases your process of success. But buy-in is always going to be a constant work in progress because things change. At the beginning of this year, December 31st, we had a horrible storm. Became a priority. We don't lose DEIB, but we try to figure out how important that is in terms of how we do our storm response. It's extremely important because how we deal with a hospital is different than how we deal with a residential home. That is an equity conversation. We need to make sure we deliver a need based off of that priority service in that case. So this is really something when we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, that we spend a lot of time trying to make sure there's an understanding of how it applies to everything we do. And that it's not a program like you mentioned before. It's not a one-time deal. It's not limited to having different looking faces around the table. It's really about embracing all of those concepts. So I know I said a whole lot.
No, and
I was trying to hit the 5 topics.
And you've done an outstanding job. And I'm not even sure. Well, I'm going to respond. I'm not sure how I'm going to respond. You know me. If I were to summarize what I heard is you're on a path. I think we're going to you've decided we're going to New York, not Tucson. You know the direction you're going. Do you have any idea where are the milestones to let you know you're going to New York or wherever you're planning to go? What are those interim milestones that you say you have some metrics?
Yeah.
that you know that you're both on the right path and that you are making tangible, not feel good progress.
So one of the key milestones has to do from a DEI perspective and community perspective has to do with community training and education. So we're trying to make sure that we reach well over 35,000 individuals about workforce training in the clean energy space. And we want to make sure that our community members are educated. So that's one key metric. Another metric we have is making sure that small businesses have access to and awareness about SMUD contracts within communities that are very diverse in small businesses across the Sacramento region. So we actually have a goal to increase that by 10%, the number of participants in our small business program. And by increasing that outreach, that actually can increase our overall economic development production within this region, and also increase the diversity of the pool of talent that we can draw from on our contracts. So that's another metric that we have. We also have a metric tied specifically to workforce development, hiring a percentage of individuals within the region, tracking and ensuring they're hired in the field. So not just hiring at SMUD, but making sure that folks have the skill set and that we're tracking through other workforce development partnerships, like the Urban League, like Asian Resources, like SETA and others, and ensuring that those folks are placed in jobs that have livable wages. We're working with folks like Grid Alternatives. We're working with the Northern California Construction Trades Association. We're working with a number of those partners to ensure that not just they have the skills, but they're actually placed. And we have a target number behind that. Internally, we actually have a metric to make sure that every leader at SMUD has a DEIB goal that's assigned to their staff that we look at as a part of the metrics for the end of the year. So we're trying to make sure that both internally and externally, that's just a snippet. I could go on because we have a huge list.
Okay, so full disclosure, I worked for, not that anybody cares, but I worked for a very large healthcare program for quite a length of time. And it was always, maybe it's the engineer in me, I always like to see org charts.
Yeah.
And like to see where these transforming programs, hate to use the word, fit within the organization. If I were to see the box of influence for Jose Bodipo-Memba, is it a solid line or a dotted line that leads to leadership?
So this is a credit to our CEO, Paul Lau. He came into this role in October of 2020 and presented this vision. And the role of DEI in the vision was a part of his idea from day one.
He brought it.
So he made the chief diversity officer a member of the executive team at SMUD initially. He also made sure that we were hiring a director of diversity, equity, inclusion that's just below the executive. And then, as I mentioned before, in terms of the span of leadership and the span of our team, we work across the entire enterprise. There's over 100 employees within our office that work across the enterprise to do this work. So this isn't something that's a one-off or it's 2 or 3 employees that are doing a little bit of work. This is actually embedded in everything we do. Now, again, it takes time with any new program to track the aspirational goals that we have. But that's why we have these goals as a part of our enterprise strategy every year. And we have to judge ourselves by those. And we present them back to the board and back to the community every year as well. So I think that SMUD and our CEO have put our money where our mouths are as it relates to DEIB. But it will be a constant effort. It'll be something that we have to continue to look at improving each and every year, because we're never going to be perfect. We're never going to have that time where we can lean back and say, oh, we've got it all figured out. Within our industry, we're definitely ahead of a lot of curves, but we aren't just satisfied with being pretty good. We've been given a lot of benefits to serve this great community. We can do better. We need to do better.
So I'll never arrive to New York, to extend my metaphor.
I think we're going to arrive to New York, but then we're going to want to cross that big boat of water over there and see if we can get to the other side. Using your analogy.
No,
SMUD's not spending in New York. I want to make sure we're not like, we're right here.
And so that even, again, to build on that analogy, SMUD's willing to build the boat, to cross the Atlantic, to get to Europe or Africa, to do whatever is necessary to achieve the goal.
SMUD has made a commitment we literally have put the flag in the ground saying that we're going to get to 2030 zero carbon. We were the first to say it nationally, and we've been backing it up. We're on pace. We're moving it in the right direction. And I believe that the entire organization is committed towards pushing us in that direction. So yes, we're committed to get to New York. We're committed to continue to get better. I think the best part of working for a company like SMUD is when you look at SMUD's history, SMUD has always had a great visionary tradition. You look at our hydroelectric plant. That was a great strategic purchase and development that allows us to keep our rates low by producing, such a high percentage of hydroelectricity. When we look at our wind development, when we purchased that back in 1989, the technology wasn't where it is now, but there was someone's within SMUD that had the foresight to say that this is a good investment for our customers. So when I look at our zero carbon plan, to me, it's just another one of the great strategic plans that SMUD has implemented that's a little ahead of its time, but will reap huge rewards for the region overall. I'm very, not just committed to it, but I'm very convinced that it's going to be the best thing for our customers.
Well, I'm getting the high sign that I'm running out of time, which is always the case. And since I know you on a personal level, I won't even have to ask you. I'll just have to get on your very busy calendar and say, Jose, I need you to enter into this space. So you don't even have to assent to, I'll come back. You're coming back. If I have to track you down,
I'll do shorter questions next time.
No, please. No, your answers are outstanding. Thank you so very much for being forthright. I guess that's one question I didn't ask. And maybe it's obvious, it's hidden in plain sight, but from a personal level, from a Jose Bodipo-Memba level, what does DEIB mean to you? Not SMUD, you.
When I look at diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and I have to tie it to SMUD, but in a little bit different way. I ended up at SMUD because of a program that provided me with exposure and opportunity. I was in a leadership program that, again, I was working as an environmental consultant, doing just fine. Enjoyed my job, had great colleagues, but I did a leadership program that exposed me to some other leaders in this region, the Nehemiah Emerging Leaders Program. And I met two individuals who worked at SMUD who extolled about how amazing a place it was, and I thought they were full of it. But they exposed me to this company that had a chance to have an influence on the region, on quality of life all the way across Sacramento, and that add core values that align with mine. If that program doesn't exist, that was really looking at trying to put DEIB in place, I'm not sitting across this table from you. They didn't give me a job. They didn't promise me anything. All they did was promise to expose me to opportunities. And I think that when I think about DEIB, it is looking at individuals who don't have the privileges that I have and giving them opportunities for something better. DEI is the man who reached out to my father and my uncle and said, I want to teach you Greek and Latin so you have an opportunity to get a further education. Now, they didn't have to do it, but they had the opportunity. And I think the other thing about DEI to me is it's recognizing the fact that people don't always have the same experiences that we have. It's taking that deeper step and having a conversation to understand. I think the better we understand each other, we're one, going to find things that we have in common. Two, we'll have more empathy for those things that we don't fully understand. And it creates better environments, more friendships, and great working spaces. So to me, DEI is something that was something before the words came together. It is really about diverse perspectives, looking at including people in your spaces. And from an equity standpoint, it's not about taking from others to give to another group. It's about meeting people where they are. You know, if my arm was chopped off and your finger was cut, you wouldn't give us both Band-Aids. You get a Band-Aid, I might get an arm like the guy from Captain America.
Correct.
Ultimately, we have to if we look at each other as one community, we have to look at how we make Sacramento great and how we apply the right resources that makes the entire region competitive and the best quality of life, period. And that's why I think that DEI is not a fad. It's not a trend. It's not for some groups, not other groups. It's really something that can make communities better.
Well, I know the field for mayor is getting quite crowded.
Not a chance.
Let me finish my.
I've been around you long enough.
You know where I'm going. It's not if, it's when. I will. Well, I can't say I'll be a part of your campaign because we have tax issues to do. But I appreciate your perspective. I appreciate you. And I'm glad I asked that final question because I think you embody what it can be. And in answer to that age-old question, am I my brother's keeper? I think the answer is heck yes. Yes, you are. And so you have stepped into that space. Thank you for entering into this physical space. And Jose Bodipo-Memba, I am privileged to be your friend, pastor, and I'm looking forward to the next time when we get to have this conversation.
Thank you, Pastor Meeks. And I just want to thank you, one, for your leadership, two, for creating a space in the community to have these conversations, and for taking this, not just this building, but this role that you have and turning it into a space and place where a community comes together. It can't be understated about how this was a place during COVID that brought in community members for vaccinations. It can't be understated that literally anyone who knocks on your door is welcome here. That you've had the Sacramento Kings do camps here. You've had music videos shot here. That this is really taking a place that sometimes doesn't feel in other areas open to everyone, truly open to the entire community. So I appreciate you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so very much.